I first want to begin with a story that kept coming in my mind a lot. I used to tell it all the time, and it just showed up today. So I'd like to begin this talk with a story about compassion. And this particular story is what is one of the Jataka tales. And in the Buddhist sutras, in the Buddhist teaching, the Jataka tales are a collection of suttas. And the collection of suttas is attributed directly to the Buddha, where the Buddha would tell stories about his past lives. And in those lives, these were the lives where he was born as an animal. And these whole Sujata Chronicles, I remember I was doing a long retreat studying and practicing, and I was reading all these old texts, and I got to all of the Jataka tales, and they were all really incredible because it was actually Siddhartha in his long journey of many lifetimes practicing. He took rebirth, as in this cosmology, in the Buddhist cosmology, we're born over and over again in different realms of existence. And there's the higher realms and the lower realms. And these realms are connected to how we live our lives. You know, we're in a hell realm, we could actually create a hell realm, right? So it's like it's all these causes and conditions, but the idea is to always become liberated. The seed of liberation is there, right? And the Buddhist cosmology is very hopeful. It's it says you're born fully enlightened, but you forgot. And so the whole journey is one of this remembrance of who we are. We're always remembering. That's why your innate self is infinite compassion, infinite metta. You are that. But it's easy for beings to become lost, and then those qualities of are obscured. It's like the clouds in front of the sun. We don't see the sun anymore. We just see the clouds. So the Jataka tales I always love because they said that when the Buddha was alive on the planet 2,500 years ago, when he was teaching throughout northern India, they would say that he would stop at these places and he would start laughing. He would be with a whole group of monks and nuns, and he would say, "Oh, I remember this tree in this forest. Here I was born an elephant." And then a whole story would come out. And because he had this prayer for liberation, they say that even when he was born as an animal, he always was practicing. So the Jataka tales are full of teaching stories of love and redemption and freedom and kindness, always about this journey of awakening. And so this is a story from the Jataka tales. So there was a forest hundreds of years ago, a beautiful forest. It reminds me somewhere like Costa Rica before people moved to Costa Rica. It was an animal realm, right? All the animals lived in the forest there, the rainforest. And they said that within that forest, this beautiful golden parrot lived. And we know birds, especially parrots, they have very long lives. And so this parrot was quite older, wise, and was very renowned, you could say, in the animal kingdom. He had many friends, and he was considered a wise creature. And so they all lived quite happily in this forest together. But one day there was a storm, and the storm created a lightning flash, and the forest caught on fire. And so the parrot said to all the animal friends, the forest is caught on fire. Run to the river, go to the river, go now to the river. And he took off flying. But see, because he had wings, he could fly to the river. But all the animals, the deer and the rabbits and all these other animals that were on lakes, they were getting trapped with the fires around them. They were feeling the fires. And so he looked back. He had flown all the way to the river, and he looked back and he saw the whole forest becoming inflamed, the whole forest, flames everywhere. And he saw all of his friends crying, help us. And they were, being surrounded by these fires. And so the parrot said, okay, friends, hold on. I will put out this fire. So he dives into the river and he gets some water on his wings and he flies back over to the middle of the fire and he shakes his wings and just a couple of drops came down. Wasn't a lot of water. He goes back and he goes forth and he goes back and forth and he's going into the river and he's collecting it on his wings and he would do this little shake, but it was barely a drop of water on a raging fire at that point, right? And it was growing in intensity. It wasn't being put out. And so while he's doing this, his throat was getting scorched, his feet were getting burned, his wings, and he was coughing. And this display of incredible compassion was happening. He was flying back and forth. Unbeknownst to him, high up in the god realms, there was 3 gods looking down. They were devas. And 2 of them started laughing and they said, look. And then according to the Buddhist cosmology, those beings can see into our realm very clearly. Like just like we can see outside our door, they can see right down into our realm. And they said, look at this little bird. He's crazy. He thinks he can put out this huge fire with just some of those little drops off of his wings. And they started laughing. But there was a deva, a beautiful god, who suddenly saw this beautiful golden bird going back and forth. And he thought, oh my God. And he walked away from the other gods and he sat down and he was watching and he thought, oh my God, this bird is going to die. He can't put out this fire. But he felt this tremendous love for this bird. He felt the bird struggle. He saw his friends, the other deer and the animals, and he saw the suffering of the forest and all the creatures there that were suffering and afraid. And he saw the bird going back and forth, and he said, oh no, I've got to do something. This bird is going to die at any moment. He can't sustain that. So the god shape shifts in that moment into a giant eagle, and he flies down next to the parrot and he says, go back, parrot, stay at the river. You cannot put out this fire. You're not capable. You can't put out this fire with those tiny drops falling off your wings. You are going to die. Stay at the river. Stop what you're doing. And the eagle was very powerful. And they in the story, they're side by side. And he's trying to talk him out. And at that moment, the parrot's diving in the water again, coming back out, flying right over to the fire, shaking his tiny wings. At that point, he's exhausted. But he says, no, I will not stop until the fire is out. And the eagle, once again, with the even louder voice, said, go back. You cannot put out this fire. And he said, there's no use telling me that. I will continue. And the eagle was, oh my God. So he flew back up into his realm and he continued watching. But as he was watching this bird, he felt this deep sadness in his heart. But what's more than that, he saw what the bird was doing. He looked at the whole picture of what was happening. He thought, and he looked around in his heaven realm, where everybody was continuing eating. And in the suttas, the gods live for sometimes 300,000 years. And they have everything. It's kind of like the stories of like Zeus, and they live in these heavenly realms, but they're not all awakened in those realms, right? And so this particular god, he felt so much watching this bird. It was like he was just this story, and he thought, oh, he's gonna die. Oh my gosh. And suddenly he saw how much he wanted to be like that bird, his heart to be like that. He thought about his own life, like, have I ever cared about anything other than just this life here and this And he goes, here's this benevolent bird, so beautiful, so golden. And his heart started to open as he witnessed the bird getting more and more tired and shaking his little feathers, getting scorched now greater and greater. And this God in those realms, often they describe their bodies as being 4 miles high. Could you imagine that? Having a body 4 miles high? So this God, as he was seeing what was going to be this horrible tragedy in his mind, the forest destroyed and the bird, and nothing he could do, he made a vow. He said, may I become like this bird, this courage. And he just loved this bird so much. He felt such a connection that he began weeping. And then his tears just began to take him over. He began wailing and wailing and weeping and weeping and weeping and weeping. And the tears somehow began to flow down into the earth realm. And all of the fires began to go out, and people were going, where is this holy rain coming from? And as the rain, they said, for the next few hours, this God, as he just cried and cried and made vows, may I become like this parrot, may I have a heart like that. He saw something, he awakened something in himself in that, right? He awakened, and as the rain fell, they say the whole forest, all the fires went out. And then they go on to describe how all the animals, the water that hit their bodies began to heal their bodies. And this rain, they say, was the tears, not just normal tears, but the tears of compassion. And so the story goes on. It's very beautiful, but it sort of becomes that fairy tale. The bird flies up in the air and he's like, the forest is all restored. The animals are like, yay! And all the fires go out and new lotuses are blooming. But the moral of the story and why I want to talk about it is because the power in the story isn't just in the tears, it's the tears of compassion. They weren't normal tears. There's a power in compassion, that our tears of compassion, when we generate that feeling, right, of caring about others, there's great power in that. So I wanted to talk about that. And I was thinking about that Jataka story because I have, honestly, my heart has been a bit in a lot of tears of compassion right now. And I keep thinking, maybe these tears put this fire out. Will this fire go out? Why won't it stop? And even in this moment when we were playing the song to the Great Mother, I was imagining water falling out of love. And I was remembering that Jataka story, thinking, please, Mother, rain down for the benefit of the beings there. And I saw this video. I love animals so much. Oh my God, dogs and cats and deers and birds. And someone sent a video of a fireman pulling 3 dogs out of a house that were all unconscious. Maybe some of you saw that video. It's making its way all around, and he laid these 3 dogs on the ground, and 3 were unconscious. And then another fireman ran over and he put a oxygen mask and he started squeezing to get the oxygen in, because I don't know how long they've been out or unconscious or what had happened, but they were, had been abandoned in the neighborhood. And so as he's over them, you could see this love of this fireman, and his putting all his effort into getting the breath in their bodies, like, wake up. And one is like, I'm alive. And just that sweetness, and I don't know what happened to the other 2, because it stopped right there where the dog jumps up and they're like, oh, you're alive. And it's like the dog was like, yay, I've been saved, and that video just made me cry, because I feel like that's compassion. That's that fireman could, in the middle of all that, was like, we must save these 3 dogs. And there's like, work so hard to get the breath to do that. And, and that's how we are with compassion. We care. And sometimes we don't believe, and this is why I want to talk about compassion. We don't understand that compassion actually nurtures us. It's not like we're putting out energy and not getting anything back. Compassion itself heals us. This is one of its great powers, right? So I want to talk about the 6 aspects of compassion. And I knew I wasn't going to get through this whole talk already. I feel like, wow, our class goes so fast. um, but I want to talk about the first thing that compassion does, and it creates emotional well being. So science is now showing us that compassionate action activates the brain's reward system, and it actually releases oxytocin, serotonin, and it reduces stress. Right. So when we're engaged, when there's something going on and we engage with compassion, the negativity or the what we perceive as a disaster, actually we get energy from it because we are engaged in and helping. We're engaged in loving action. Right. So in any moment when something's going wrong, you can start doing compassionate action, and that becomes a source of your emotional well-being. It also increases emotional strength and it enhances your resiliency, right? It's like I think a lot about the ancestors and the resilience. I think of Harriet Tubman. Some people think of Harriet Tubman as this fierce fighter. That's aside. But when I was writing about Harriet Tubman, it was this incredible love. Like, I will go save my children. Goodbye. No one's stopping me. It was like, in that action, right? It's like when it's motivated by compassion, can give you this incredible protection of resiliency. When we fall into the state of hatred and fear, we are vulnerable in that moment. We are not strong in that moment, right? We become very vulnerable. And compassion also improves your mood, right? Both giving and receiving compassion contributes to greater happiness. Altruism, science has shown, makes people happy, right? And compassion is an action that we can also have with ourselves, everybody. Self-compassion is the most powerful medicine that you can give. And it's important to notice how you respond to yourself when you're in suffering. A lot of times we attack ourselves. And let me tell you, I've had to learn. I've been learning so much since I had that DHL accident. I know I talked about this. Bus hit me a couple of months. I mean, a DHL truck hit Robert and I, who's on this Zoom, while we were walking. And I was so kind of hard on myself that I should get over it. I don't know what I was thinking. I'm calling it superwoman syndrome. It's like when you're superwoman or you think you're superwoman, but you're not superwoman if you don't have compassion, because stuff is going to go wrong, And so I've had to slow down, with my healing journey, and I might need another surgery on my finger and then my back. I'm like, oh no, I have to see chiropractors, and this is a little off, and this is a little off, and I'm like, yes, and the self-compassion, remembering that, like, yes, I know you can't do that right now. You can't go do this thing and this thing. And it's just reminding me that suffering is an opportunity to learn what real compassion is. And this isn't something that we learn and it's a one and done, everybody. This is a journey of practice. Just like metta, we are learning how to abide in that, learning compassion. And I feel like just a baby, a beginner all the time. Like, it's insight. When compassion is mixed with wisdom, liberation is inevitable because every action becomes dynamic, every action becomes altruistic. Okay, so this is what I wanted to also share with you. The second power aspect of compassion is your physical health. Okay, it actually lowers blood pressure and it promotes relaxation. right? So they tracking people who are doing in the healing process in hospitals. Remember, they say that people who have the compassionate mood and elder care, those who are up, helping others, cheering people up, feeling altruistic, lowers your blood pressure. It boosts immunity. Compassionate practices such as mindfulness and metta, they actually enhance your immune system, right? So where other people are maybe thinking they need to take all these supplements. So if you're having things where you're feeling your immune system is compromised, let's start with doing compassion practice, because our bodies are alive. They're responding all the time to the energy that we're putting into it, right? It's incredible. Physically, there's an increase in longevity. Studies show that people who engage in altruistic behavior tend to live longer, healthier lives. Yeah. So this is also something, right? Like, those blue zones. I love Costa Rica. It's one of my favorite places. And there's a blue zone there where there's all these people that had very little access to traditional healthcare, everybody. And they're all in their hundreds. They're reported to be some of the happiest people. And they're living like simple village life on the land, eating their papayas, growing their food, taking care of their families together. But there's a sense of that connection. So I like this. So let's talk about the third aspect of compassion. Again, this is medicine, everybody. We're looking at the medicine that we need in this new paradigm, right? This is the real medicine. This is what's going to get us through the great turning. Okay, so mental health. Compassion reduces anxiety and depression. Compassion fosters a sense of connection and purpose, which can alleviate feelings of loneliness and despair, right? So a lot of people, the sickness is loneliness and a loss of purpose in life. That can be fatal. We die a spirit death when the heart shuts down. And remember, the heart wants to be liberated. The heart, these four qualities that we are practicing in heart medicine, which is the metta, which is the compassion, which is the joy, and then the equanimity. Those are the four immeasurable qualities. In the Dharma, they're likened to universe. They're bigger than that. Like, these are qualities that grow and expand. So it's easy for us to talk about them, but until we really practice them, the practice is the liberation point, everybody. And this is why I want to encourage us to be practicing. Okay, compassion also boosts our self-esteem. Being compassionate to oneself can improve self-worth and reduce the harsh criticism in our mind. When we have a lot of self-compassion, we're not attacking ourselves. And that self-attack is the most dangerous, right? It's like we get eaten up on the inside, right? We don't even realize how harsh we are until we start doing compassion practice. A lot of times when I would do metta practice and compassion practice, I really want to encourage you to touch your body. Oftentimes on long retreats, I would find myself like this, just spontaneously, or I would kiss my hand, or I would see the vision of myself and I'd be kissing my face, right? As an act of like, oh, honey, I'm with you. I'm here for you, especially in a moment where there is pain, emotional pain, physical pain, right? The pain of uncertainty, the pain that is happening for many of us as we witness cruelty, right? Instead of helping with the fires, people are laughing and making up, it's just like no compassion for what's going on. Some people have zero access to that. And I have compassion for that. Wow, to see all of these families and people in just the nervousness of being notified to leave your home, all of the hurt. And this happens around the world. but it's close to me being that I'm from LA. It's up close. I'm getting calls from my people, text messages. So there's a way in which I'm feeling the truth of the impacts in a different way.